Good morning. My name is George McKibbon. I'm trained in environmental studies and am a member of the Gathering Place Presbyterian Church in Port Colborne, Ontario. Prior to the pandemic, I hosted a session on climate change and its effects on Port Colborne and our faith. At that meeting, I was challenged to describe what those effects might be to our community. 3 years later, and after the pandemic, here is what I found. Jessica Blythe from Brock University provided me with a link to an Environment Canada website displaying projections of past and future trends for temperature and precipitation from 1950 through 2021 and beyond, assuming maximum greenhouse gas emissions scenarios. I quote, "For the 1951-1980 period, the average annual temperature was 8.4 degrees centigrade. For the 1981 to 2010 period, it was 9 degrees centigrade. Under a high emissions scenario, annual average temperatures are projected to be 10.9 degrees centigrade for the 2021 through 2050 period, 12.9 degrees centigrade for the 2051 through 2080 period, and 14.3 degrees centigrade for the last 30 years of this century. Average annual precipitation for the period of 1951 to 1980 was 874 millimeters. Under a high emissions scenario, this is projected to be 6% higher for the period of 2021 through 2050, 10% higher for the 2051 through 2080 period, and 14% higher for the last 30 years of this century. The International Panel on Climate Change, in its sixth annual report summary, indicated that human-induced climate change is already affecting weather patterns throughout the world, irrespective of the region that we find ourselves living in. Here is the way the panel suggests that we can think about those changes in terms of Port Colborne's community. On page 18 of the summary for policymakers, the authors characterize what incremental increases in temperature, 1 degree centigrade, 1.5 degrees centigrade, 2 degrees centigrade, and 4 degrees centigrade mean for 10-year hot temperature and extreme precipitation events using the 1850 to 1900 period as a data benchmark. If an extreme temperature and heavy precipitation events occurred, say, once every 10 years, with a 1 degree centigrade temperature increase, extreme temperature and heavy precipitation events occurred 2.8 and 1.3 times more frequently for each. With a 1.5 degree centigrade increase, extreme temperature and heavy precipitation events occurred 4.3 and 1.5 times more frequently. With a 2 degrees centigrade increase, extreme temperature and heavy precipitation events occurred 5.6 and 1.7 times more frequently. With an extreme 4 degrees centigrade increase, extreme temperature and heavy precipitation events occurred 9.4 and 2.7 times more frequently. There is no projection available for extreme wind events and high Lake Erie water levels, except to say anecdotally, we live here and have experienced these in Port Colborne in the past. What does that mean for the future of our community in Port Colborne? What I've done is I've walked this community extensively. I've read as extensively as I can, and I've listened to experts from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and the Niagara Coastal Collaborative to discern what those changes might mean. In particular, I'm concerned about extreme events involving winds, high lake levels, and excessive rainfall events. And in particular, I'm concerned about the shoreline and about storm sewer outfalls, which may be below water levels when we have high lake levels, and sewer surcharging, that is, water being forced back into storm sewers and combined sanitary sewers where these exist in Port Colborne. In addition, there are low-lying areas adjacent to the shore, beyond the dunes that exist along the shore, which are potentially below high lake water levels, and which will be aggravated and flooded during extreme wind and extreme precipitation events. And that's particularly a concern with respect to the outfalls of the Wignall and Eagle Marsh municipal drains, where these outfall control devices are intended to prevent flooding inland when we have high lake water levels. These devices were designed and implemented and constructed when our experiences of these events was less extensive than it is projected to be in the future. Former quarries existing further north of the shore also represented a difficulty, particularly where these water level controls at the outfalls, the Wignall and the Eagle Marsh municipal drain outfalls exist, and where the Conservation Authority implements drainage devices to lower water levels during high levels. And what might be the fishery and water quality impacts associated with lengthier periods of time when the Wignall and Eagle Marsh outlet controls need to be closed during spawning periods and other times during the year. Shoreline erosion and sedimentation patterns are also changing as a result of high water levels and changing precipitation and wind events. And these often require extensive removal of sand, particularly in the Eagle Marsh drain outlet and the storm sewer outfalls into Gravelly Bay. The morphology along the shoreline is also changing, and that will have extreme effects on shoreline erosion and our planting efforts to try to stabilize the shoreline and on the erosion control devices. And last, the region of Niagara's official plan provides for aggregate extraction within the aquifer north of the shoreline and across the entire municipality. This may result in a future in which the municipality has a band of abandoned and rehabilitated lakes where quarries have existed. And what kind of a future does that pose for when we experience high lake water levels and extreme precipitation and wind events? What does our faith have to say about all these things? In an important article linking faith with the environment, Lynn White observed that where we objectify and commercialize the environment, using an understanding that we have dominion over the environment, we create conditions, the kinds of conditions we now face. He suggests we need to reread and rethink Scripture and rethink the works of saints and theologians like St. Francis of Assisi more carefully. I agree. If we do so, here is what we will find. Number one, the earth is alive. Number two, God's covenant is not only to humanity, but to the earth and all creatures on it. Number three, the earth and all creatures on earth have covenant responsibilities to God and to humanity as well. 4, we have covenant responsibilities to God and to the earth and all creatures on it. 5, to have dominion doesn't mean control as much as it means to have speech and to see and to hear well as we wait for God's revelations, to name creatures and the earth specifically. 6, the earth and all creatures on it are waiting with expectation for the children of God to see and listen to the needs of humanity and to the earth and all creatures on it. If this is the faith you would like to explore, and sounds like a community of faith you would like to belong to, we invite you to the gathering place at any time that you would like to join and be with us. We want the gathering place to be a safe and loving community with mutual respect and all living creatures on it. Thank you.